Hi, this is Eric Bourne with Harrisburg Area Community College, and we're going to be doing another lesson this week. This time we're going to be looking at some commonly confused words. We're going to be focusing on the subject of spelling. Now, let's get something right on the table at the start. Lots of people aren't good at spelling. And it's hard to feel like you're making progress just because there are so many words out there that you can misspell, and there are so many ways to misspell them. Sometimes there's spelling errors of words you just don't know, and sometimes it's your typing that gets in the way, sometimes it's your editing that gets in the way. There are a lot of problems that can lead to bad spelling. Now, some of them I can help you with. We're going to talk about some words. We're going to do some things that I think can improve your spelling. Let's throw a couple other strategies out there. One really important skill for being able to spell in today's modern environment is you need to know how to type. Now that I don't have class time for, but it's definitely a job skill that you want to know in today's economy. Now thankfully there are lots of tools out there to help you with typing. There are typing tutors and games galore available for you free on the internet. I recommend that you find a little free time to work on them, or you're going to spend a lot longer than you should typing my essays for class, and if you're not good at typing, producing less clean documents than you want. And for our discussion in today's grammar work, we're going to be looking at some specific words. We're going to be looking at some common misspellings that occur because of words that sound alike, but actually end up meaning different things. First, I just want to acknowledge a couple of things right out of the chute. The definitions that I'm using for all these words come from your textbook, the Commonly Confused Words chapter of Real Essays with Readings. I am leaning on them for my definitions for this. The sentences are mine, the explanations are mine, but let's give credit where credit is due. And while we're talking about that chapter, let's just note that it's a larger resource than what I provide you here. If spelling is a problem of yours and these types of spelling errors in particular are up your alley, then I'm going to recommend you spend some extra time with this chapter. There's some more words explained in there that may be useful for you. Got a lot of words to do, so let's dive in. We're going to start with accept and accept. The first accept is a verb. We're going to see this throughout our spelling list today. Many of these words are distinguished by parts of speech. Our verb accept we use to indicate to agree, to receive, or admit. For example, we accept a gift. I accept your gift with thanks. We use accept in terms of college admissions. I was accepted into Harvard University. We use it with apologies. I accept your apology. The other accept, this time with an E, is a conjunction, something similar to but or other than. We use it after we express, it's kind of a general statement that is true most of the time, except in a certain regard. I like all pizza toppings. You order a pizza, I'm happy with whatever you order on top of it, except anchovies. Next pair we're going to peek at is affect and effect. I should probably acknowledge that these words have been so grossly abused over the last 20-some years that to a certain extent you could get away with using effect with an E almost anywhere. However, in a college environment, you're going to be writing papers for people who tend to be picky about these words, so you should know traditionally how they have been used. Effect with an A is a verb. Effect with an E is a noun. That's going to be our basic difference. Effect with an A is a verb to have an impact on, to change something. So you should not let your emotions affect your judgment. If you can see that this word is expressing the action of the sentence, then you can see that we need effect with an A. In contrast, effect with an E is a noun indicating a result. So we might use it as this way. One effect of my decision to attend school was that I had to quit my job. Let the word right in front of affect help you decide which one you need. If you have the word the or an, like that, those words are only used in front of nouns. So you can be confident that those kind of indicators help you indicate which word to use. In this case, we have the word one. Now, indicating a number of things, should indicate to you that you have, well, a thing. You want the noun version. Next up, we're going to be looking at our and our. Now, these are not quite homonyms. They do not quite sound the same, but when we speak quickly, they sometimes do sound similar enough to confuse us when we try to transpose our spoken words into writing. Are with an A is a verb. It is one of the many forms of the verb to be. We use it with plural constructions, as in my college friends are still in touch with me. We use this verb are as a linking verb to connect this group of college friends to the description about them, that they are still in touch with me. The other our is an our with an O, is a pronoun demonstrating ownership, a possessive pronoun. We use it to indicate who something belongs to. For example, our classroom is sometimes locked when we arrive in the morning. The our's entire job in this sentence is to indicate whose classroom we're talking about. Is it yours? Is it mine? Is it theirs? No, it's our classroom. And that's its whole job in the sentence. Once again, the nearby word should help you figure out whether you want our or our. The next word is something that can be owned, that can belong to somebody, that we can indicate ownership of, and probably you have a need for the our with an O. Next, let's look at its and its. The first it's, the one without an apostrophe, that little hanging piece of punctuation up in the middle between the T and the S on the other side of our screen here, is a pronoun showing ownership, very similar to our. But instead of referring back to a group of people that you belong to, its refers to some kind of thing or animal. For example, my dog was wagging its tail. The word its in this sentence is merely indicating to you which tail the dog is wagging. Not its friend's tail, but its own. The other its is a contraction. We often use an apostrophe that way to indicate that we are shortening a longer phrase into one word. It's a contraction of the word it is. We might say, for example, it's hard to balance a pencil on your nose. To make sure that we're using the word it's appropriately in this situation, we'd merely expand the contraction out and see if the sentence still makes sense. It is hard to balance a pencil on your nose. That sounds right. We're happy with it's with an apostrophe. Next up, let's look at no and no. One has two silent letters, the other has none. Our first one, with a K, is a verb to understand, to have knowledge of. For example, I know how to juggle. The other no we use to form a negative. For example, I have no interest in shoveling snow. Indicate when, an opposite of something we don't want. Next, let's consider loose and lose. Once again, these are not quite homonyms, they don't quite sound the same, but they look close enough that these are very often mistaken in student writing. Our first one, loose, is an adjective for something that is baggy or not fixed in place. For example, we might talk about a loose screw. The loose screw in my chair fell out this morning. On the other hand, we have a verb. Different part of speech entirely. We use this when we want to say that we've misplaced something, that we've forfeited possession of something. So we suspected that our baseball team was going to lose. I always lose my keys in the morning. Next we have past and past. These are two pretty common mistakes that I see as a writing instructor. Our first one, past with an ed at the end, is a past tense verb. Isn't it delightful when I get to use the other homonym to help me define the first one? No wonder I get these words confused. While this past with an ed we use to indicate something that went by or went ahead. I passed an accident on the highway this morning. When you're indicating something that you did or something is doing, when this is the action of your sentence, you need the ed. On the other side, past with a t. One nice and simple way we use it is to talk about time that has gone by, like no one can change the past. And once again, that word the should indicate to you a noun, should help you see that you don't want the ed form, you don't want the verb form. We do also use it as a preposition, though, and this is where things get a little murky. It is used to indicate things that we've gone by, over, or just beyond. For example, we quickly walked past the designated smoking area. Now, we can see how there might be some confusion between my example on the left in passing an accident, and over on the right, walking past the designated smoking area. The key in the second sentence is that the action word of this sentence is not past. The action word is walked. What that word past is helping us do is indicating where I was walking. I was walking past this area that I didn't want to linger in. That is a little tricky of a distinction to see. However, if you can follow up on our skills from the basic sentence in identifying the action word, you should be able to correctly use these two words. Alright, another couple of common ones. Let's think about than and then. Our first one, than with an A, is a word used to compare two or more things or persons. It shows up as part of comparisons. So I have more ties than you do. I've got a bigger tie collection to go with my suits. That word than is showing up between the two items in my comparison, between me and you. The other word, then, has to do with time, then with an E, indicating something at a certain time. I will grade your essays, and then I will write the midterm exam. We do see then with an E show up in conditional sentences, if then. For example, if you want a good grade on the midterm, then you need to study. That isn't quite the idea of time, but it's close enough for most of us to hang on to this sort of idea of then with an E being about time for that to be useful. Alright, now we're going to cover three words there, and there. I know that if you have been in an English class before at all in your life, that you have had a teacher try to teach you these words. These are probably the most confused words in the English language. Let's try again. We're going to start with there, T-H-E-R-E, a word indicating location or existence. If that sounds like a general sort of definition, you are probably right. This tends to be the one that most of us fall back on if we're not sure, or that we just use all the time without thinking about. And it has enough different usages that perhaps that move is justified. For example, we might say, I will mount my new television on the wall over there. There's a sort of pointing quality to this there that you can keep in mind as being part of this definition. In terms of existence, it's a an odd way of putting it, just to simply say that we use there at the start of sentences. Like there are, there is. There are many new shows I want to watch. There is a spider under your desk. Sentences like that. If you see the word there at the very start of the sentence, it's commonly going to be T-H-E-R-E. Now our next there, the one with an apostrophe in the middle, a contraction of the words they are, is the reason why I can't say that the other there is, always the one to go to if it's the first word in a sentence. This is a common start to a sentence as well. For example, we say things like they're going to watch a movie to indicate some group of people and what they're about to do, what they are like. And because it's a contraction, we can easily test for this one simply by expanding it. Expand it out to 2 words and see if your sentence still makes sense. They are going to watch a movie? That's fine. And our third one is T-H-E-I-R. Once again, this is a pronoun showing ownership, referring here to something that belongs to a group of people, as in my students love their phones a little too much. We use it in front of a noun to indicate who that noun belongs to, these phones that are owned by my students. Next up, we're going to talk about to, and to. The first to, to, is probably the most common one. It's one of our basic prepositions, a word indicating a direction or movement, as in I'm walking, where am I walking? To the Whitaker Building. It's also used in verb constructions, so it'll show up in odd moments in your sentence hanging out amongst a group of verbs, as in I'm hoping to start my own business. My verb phrase is all that am hoping to start. And verb phrases do get long and complicated there. And the to is going to be part of sometimes the last verb in the sequence. TOO, to, is a little bit more simple, though we are going to acknowledge a couple usages here. It sometimes means also, more than enough, as in I want to watch that movie too. Somebody else wants to watch it, and I'm indicating, hey, me too. It's also used as an adverb to indicate something very in excess of something. Like this salsa is too mild and boring. It needs some spice. It needs some heat. Finally, we have the easy to, TWO, which is a number, located smack between 1 and 3. I have 2 sons and no free time. Last set here, we're going to look at your and your. The one without an apostrophe is a pronoun showing ownership. I hope you've noticed how many times I've said that phrase, a pronoun showing ownership, as in I understand your concerns, the concerns that belong to you. On the other side, we have a contraction. It's a contraction of the words you are. And so we can simply test which your we want by expanding out the contraction to see if our sentence still makes sense with our choice. You're spending too much time on this one reading assignment. My your here we should be able to expand it to you are and still have the sentence make sense. You are spending too much time. That still works for us. Alright, that was a lot of detail. Let's try to wrap this up by noticing a few patterns from what we worked. How can we improve our spelling significantly with the most focused effort? We don't want to read the dictionary to improve our spelling. We want to focus our attention on a few keywords. The first thing that I think we should learn from that list of words I covered is that you should avoid using contractions. Now, partly you avoid using contractions because it's a lazy way of talking and therefore a lazy way of writing, and laziness has no place in academic writing. But also, you noticed how many of those words we covered had a contraction as one side of the pair. If you just don't use contractions, you can avoid some of these problems. If you know that you're just never going to use the version of your that has an apostrophe in it, you're probably going to avoid some problems. Secondly, a lot of these errors included a possessive pronoun, these pronouns that indicate ownership. There's not a lot of these possessive pronouns, it's just that most of them cause us fits with spelling. If you focus your effort on the handful of possessive pronouns that are out there, odds are you'll be able to clean up a lot of your spelling errors. Third, homonyms in general are the problem for most of us in spelling. These words that sound the same but have different meanings. We use them just fine when we speak, and we struggle with them when we write. Now, there are a lot more homonyms than there are possessive pronouns, but compared to what's in the dictionary, homonyms is still a pretty small subsection of our language. If you take the time over the course of this semester to try to learn these homonyms one at a time, you will tackle a large chunk of your spelling mistakes. Last thought in terms of doing well with spelling. Wait to edit your essays until a day after you write them. Now this one I want to give a little bit of attention to. Editing is hard. Let me just ask you a question here. How many times have you printed out an essay because you thought you were done with it, and you put it in your folder and you brought it to class the next day, and within seconds of you pulling that essay out of its folder, you noticed an error on it? You've done that. I know you have. Everybody does this. And it feels terrible because you notice that mistake the moment you pull it out. There isn't even a delay. You don't even have to look. You pull it out and you say, oh, where did this mistake come from? That's because we can't edit very well until we've waited some time after writing. Writing and editing don't really happen at the same time. Almost none of us can do that. You really shouldn't expect of yourself that you should be doing that. Now, this requires planning ahead to take care of. You're going to need to draft and write your essays early enough so that you have time to edit a day later. But that's the sort of planning that I'm really trying to encourage you to do. I assign my essays. I have a rough draft due a week before the final is due to try to force that time on you so that you're able to edit appropriately. And that might be the most important lesson of today. The spelling is difficult in terms of just being consistent and managing to get your ideas out on paper. But the best thing you can do is give yourself the editing time you need to produce the documents that you want. Alright, we're going to call that a day. Turn your attention to the worksheets that I provided for you. I'm asking you to write a sentence for each of the homonyms covered in this presentation. Show me those words in action.